Please welcome the panel on Corporate Boards in the Digital Age, Governance and Growth, moderated by Director and Board Member Johnson & Johnson, JPMorgan Chase, MetLife, Saudi Aramco, Mark A. Weinberger.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good to see you all.
Hi.
I am excited about this panel because these are great people who I know I'm going to learn a lot from, and that's most important, but I hope you do too. We are going to hit, in the short time we have, the big issues that, as you'll hear who these people are addressing the biggest boardrooms to the startups to the all different types of industries across America, trying to understand how to operate at a board level in a very uncertain environment. And we're going to hit things like governance and AI, workforce evolution, succession planning, DEI, shareholder activism, geopolitical and regulatory challenges, board leadership and mentorship. And in the fifth hour of our, we'll get to as much as we can. We have a limited time, obviously, but I'm excited. So you all have the information on our panelists, so I'm not supposed to go through all of their details. But just so, for those of you who may not read every page of the Milken book, I'm going to tell you just something briefly about all of our guests. So Betsy, I'll start with you to my left. Three-time CEO, serial entrepreneur, served on over 38 boards, 17 IPOs, written 3 books, certainly on the Wynn board, GoPuff, chair of Google Cloud, on Diligent, everything. I could keep going, but I'll stop there. Merritt's next. Merritt, chairman of the board of MasterCard, Dean Emerita of Columbia University School of International Public Affairs, expert in international trade and investment, lifelong involvement in Asia-Pac, which is obviously an incredibly hot topic these days. Also written 3 books. She was a member of the World Trade Organization's appellate body, deputy assistant USTR to Japan and China. She sits on APTA, American Funds Capital Group, and she speaks Japanese. And if you slip into it, I'm going to pull you out of it. So that's the... all right, then we got Debbie Lee. Debbie is co-founder and partner of Monarch Collective, and there's a lot of connectivity here between Dina and Debbie in mentoring. A lot of real great women mentors here. She also is chairman and CEO emeritus of Bet Networks, and she sits on a great array of boards of Marriott International, Procter & Gamble, Warner Brothers, and Discovery. Nothing going on there, so that should be interesting. Then we have Dina Powell. Dina, I've known the longest in this group. Dina Powell McCormick, I should say. Vice chairman, president, head of global client services for BDT and MSD. Meta Platforms, ExxonMobil, 18 years at Goldman Sachs on the management committee, assistant to the president for State and Undersecretary of Public Affairs and Public Diplomacy, Deputy National Security Advisor, Chairman of Robin Hood Foundation, and she was at the Office of Personnel Management in the Bush administration. And I had 4 kids under 6, and when I wasn't going to go in, said no to the president, said no to the secretary. They put Dina on me. I ended up going over to be assistant secretary, and I thank Dina for that. Changed my life, Mike. So appreciate that. And then Brian. Brian's down the end over there, all the way. Brian Stafford, CEO of Diligent Corporation. Anybody who's on a board knows Diligent. It's a great company. Gets a lot of great help to helping all of us organize. Was former partner at McKinsey. Has done a lot of research on boards recently about what the current thinking is about business and directors. And I think I'm going to start there, Brian, if I could, and just ask you to, with the recent research you did in April, what's top of mind for most of the boards from your survey, and then we'll get into the individual issues.
Well, actually, so we do a survey of most of our users. We work with about 750,000 board members and CEOs globally. And in the April research we did, director pessimism was actually at an all-time low. So they're most pessimistic than they've ever been, just to be clear. 4.7 out of 10 was kind of their optimistic or less optimistic view of the world, largely driven by risk and uncertainty. So it's a big theme. I think we all know that, and anytime you turn on the television, it's hard not to avoid it. That's a big theme. Other themes are cyber always, artificial intelligence, and then there's always something around talent and planning and human capital across the organization. So those are the big themes in the director world.
All right, so each one of those you can unpack, of course, in many ways. Betsy, since you're on my left here, I'm going to start with you, global cloud chair, agentic AI. We're all talking about AI. Is it really making a difference yet? What's going on with AI? What works, what doesn't work in the boards you see and are at?
So I think everybody knows about AI, and now we move from there to large language models to agentic, where the agent actually does the work. And in the Wall Street today, there was a great article on United Health, and I was speaking to the CIO, so United Health, $300 billion, and he said he's saving $2.73 billion using agentic AI. He has a call center that he does 300 million calls. Last year, he did 40 million using the agent. This year, he's up to 100. So the speed is faster than anyone thinks, and the savings. The Hartford, has 5, 6 actual clear ROI to use the agentic to be the underwriter, to do workman's comp claims. So I think it's arrived and happening quickly. The question for all of us is, so do you have a kill switch? When is the human in the loop? How do you avoid a lock-in? Because you have proprietary systems on agentic, which nobody thinks of, like a closed system like Epic or SAP. So somebody like Anthropic is open, someone like Microsoft optimized their agentic for their proprietary system.
And what about the workforce? How do you think about it in terms of affecting the workforce going forward?
So at United Health, he has 50,000 going up to 100,000 call center people. He says he'll go back to 50 and it'll shrink from there. At Meta, which I know you know, I think 2 years ago it was 17% of the finance group was using agents for accounts payable, receivable, up to 35% this year, projected 50%. Salesforce says they won't hire any more software engineers because the GPT and other agentic tools are giving them 20% more productivity.
Merritt, let me ask you, financial services you're involved in, obviously, and a number of other areas. You're also very familiar with AI. How do you see it in the regulatory environment? Guardrails, is it slowing down the development of AI, or how are you viewing it from your boards at MasterCard and elsewhere?
Well, thank you, and good morning. It's very nice to be here with this really expert group and all of you. So, I think the benefits of AI are very abundant, and they're cutting across many areas: efficiency, productivity. The companies that I've been involved with, for example, MasterCard, AI is not a new topic. It's been of many. A decade ago, they were making acquisitions, APT, Brighterion, et cetera, to use AI for advanced data analytics insights, and now, you've got Gen AI on top of that. So I guess I've become more convinced in this moment of transformation and AI rollout of how important the fundamentals are. And some of those fundamentals are really around sound data governance and good principles governing data. If you don't have those in place, and then you're moving into a Gen AI world, there's a lot of risk in there that can really cause troubles for you. So I see MasterCard as a place that has very sound principles and operates in 220 countries, right? So when you think about a global payments and technology company utilizing AI and advancing it, what they must do, and others that I work with that are ecosystem players, they have to build a sound digital ecosystem for AI. And that's what you're beginning to see new dimensions developing. Even last week for MasterCard, they announced an Agentics payment initiative, right, with Microsoft. And because you're talking about building something at scale. So in that case, safety and soundness, which has always been fundamental, becomes even more important. And it's also an opportunity to build for the world, right? So build for everyone. It's not just building for one jurisdiction, it's building for the world and bringing small businesses in, large businesses, rural, urban. So I think that agenda is a very exciting one when I think about payments. But I also see it in other areas where I'm involved. Edge technology and AI and autonomy are coming together in automotive, very transformative. So I think I'm not involved with healthcare, but I have to say I'm really excited about what's happening for discovery. So whether it's efficiency, it's productivity, it's inclusion, it's breakthrough, and the guardrails, I think, are very important to build. Companies have to have those internalized. They have to build them themselves. And then, of course, there are broad parameters that are out there in the world, and they're non-uniform. And so you have to navigate that complexity.
And let me ask, I go to Debbie for a second. With your boards, Debbie, across the spectrum, how do you look at AI and say, as a company, we're winning or we're losing? How do you benchmark whether what you're hearing from your management team is really coming up with outcomes or good spending?
That's a very good question. First of all, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. With my boards, and the companies that I work with, they're at varying different degrees of use of AI. And we were just getting ready to deep dive into that before January. Since January, our priorities and the issues we have to deal with on a daily basis have changed quite a bit, from DEI to ESG to tariffs. So unfortunately, I feel like AI has been pushed aside on some of the companies I'm on the board of. But I think everyone feels that it's worth investigating, especially in payments and accounting and things like that, where you can use it. Some of the companies are scared of AI. We went through the writer's strike in LA, and I'm on the board of Warner Brothers Discovery. So that was a big issue. What are the guilds going to say in their documents about AI? Can it get rid of everyone's job? My daughter's a writer for a sitcom, and I know she's very concerned about it. So I think on that creative side, we're learning what AI can do and what it can't do. I feel more comfortable it's not going to replace human beings. Human beings will use it as a tool. But the entire creative world does not feel like that. So there's still a lot of issues to deal with there. On P&G, Procter & Gamble, whether it's in the innovation area or manufacturing, all the things that they do, AI will be helpful. On Marriott, I was just beginning to see AI design of new hotels and rooms, and allowing consumers to design their own rooms and what that looks like. So I think companies have to take it almost a day at a time and really feel it out in terms of how much they want to invest in it. But I think we can't, as corporate leaders, we can't be afraid of AI. We have to learn it. Our children have to learn it. We have to understand how it makes our lives better and improves the performance of companies. But I wish we could get back to it and stop talking about DEI, tariffs, and ESG right now.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that in a second, though.
Okay.
So I'm going to skip Dina for 1 second and go down to Brian, because I know you spend a lot of time with AI as well, and you are AI, or at least a platform for lots of boards. So tell us what you see as best practices or what's going on.
Yeah, I can answer on two different levels. One, just as someone who builds products today, it is among the most exciting time I've been at Diligent for 10 years, and probably the most exciting time from a software development and product development perspective. It is completely, we have totally turned our product roadmap upside down and led with all of AI. We touch areas like governance, but also legal and compliance, areas that are going to be rapidly transformed, simplified, cost taken out through AI. On the product side, and most of anyone who uses our products should lean into their companies. But now, just for the full breadth of features, you can get all your documents summarized. We'll turn your board document into a podcast for you, so you can actually listen to it on the fly. You get summarized materials for each of your committees, just to make it easier. If you're not on that committee, it helps you go through it in a simpler way. For management teams now, for those more on the startup side, our large companies haven't jumped into this yet, but you just put base files in a folder and we create your board deck for you. And then we actually prep companies with key questions that AI asks, that the management's going to ask to prepare, or your board's going to ask to prepare you. So I think it's super cool and transformative, and just the amount of things that now you can do and transform or modernize old ways, but still hopefully do it in a way that is governance forward. And then I mentioned this to Merrick earlier, I think privacy and data governance is so important. And one of the people on our team, one of people who leads our customer success team, has characterized our AI, which exists kind of in a private walled garden sort of way, as smart as Einstein, but with the memory of a goldfish. So it will help you do whatever analysis, insight, et cetera, on whatever you're working on, but it has no memory of it, and to make sure that it stays kind of within you and your board. For best practices across boards, I think it runs the gamut. I think all the boards who say we just want to know what everybody's doing with it and what AI is touching, guess what? You can't, because everybody is exploring with it everywhere. People are uploading material into ChatGPT, and they're doing it because they're experimenting. They're trying to be well, mean well, but what kind of data are they putting in it? Is it personal identifiable information? Is it client data? So I think just trying to put guardrails around something that has so much excitement and is moving really, really quickly, I think it's very, very difficult for organizations to do and try to get behind. And so I think a lot of organizations are looking for those best practices, looking to put it in those governance frameworks and those guardrails. But I think if you're going to talk to a marketing department or other kind of places where they're driving experimentation, it's difficult to keep up with all the experimentation that's going on in your organization, the edge. And so data governance, how you control it, make sure you can put the right guardrails around the most important information so people can experiment with it. But I think we're in such an exciting time for innovation. How do you allow the companies that you're on the board of to thrive and to innovate, but make sure you can still protect the most important information and put the guardrails around that first? And I think that's just a balance that you're trying to get and drive with management teams.
Great. All right. So, Dean, I'm going to give you a chance to talk about AI. If you want to add anything, I want to move to the next topic with you. But you just joined Meta, so it's hard to ask for a lot of great insights. But with your role with Michael Dell and your other firm, where you're vice chair and president, and your role with Goldman, anything you want to add on the AI? From the small business to large business.
Well, I'm delighted to be with you, Mark, and I can't think of somebody who is a better expert, but frankly has had more experience advising CEOs, from his CEO-ship of E&Y to being on the boards of JPMorgan and Johnson & Johnson. And you're a little too humble, so I just want to say you are a CEO whisperer and a guru to so many board members. Certainly me, he's been a mentor of mine for so many years. I see Scott Miller, another CEO guru and board member and friend out there too. So in full disclosure, I've been on the ExxonMobil board for 2 years. I joined Meta and have not yet joined my first board meeting. So in the interest of full governance, but obviously in the course of talking to Mark and the other board members over the last several months, AI is something that's central. You saw recently in his own remarks and of the launch of the new AI product. And Debbie said something so interesting, which is, a year ago when we were sitting here at Milken, the entire conversation would have been about AI. Mm-hmm. And in the sessions that I've attended so far, I wouldn't say it's been pushed to the side, but I would say there have been so many other things. And I think this is what we certainly see at my firm, BDT and MSD Partners, where we have the privilege to work with over 220 of the most meaningful families and founders. Mm. We just had our CIO conference, and what really struck me was, especially with these mostly private companies, they tend to not necessarily focus as much on tariffs, geopolitical issues, national security. And frankly, that was the topic. I would say that's topic 1, 2, and 3 today in every boardroom. And I think that is interesting, not so much because I think AI is you're going to move away from that. But I think certainly over the next 18 months at least, the agenda on board meetings for board directors is going to be very focused on these other issues. The other thing I would say that I think was a big theme at this conference that we just had was how much families and founders are focusing in this environment on long-term investment. I mean, I think that's something that we feel we're most proud of, is that we really work with our clients over decades. And the next generation is really going to be taking the baton, and AI is going to completely transform the way the next group of leaders of those companies are evaluating opportunities, investment opportunities, global regions that they're more focused on. And finally, I think mentorship, which we can get to, I think, Mark, as well. My husband and I just wrote a book that we're proud of called Who Believed in You, which actually started out during COVID, not meant to be a book, almost 5 years ago. We have 6 daughters between us, and we survived that. Not just 2 Senate campaigns and some other things. But what we realized is that this generation missed out not just on high school proms and graduations, and frankly, so many meaningful years of their lives. They missed out on that first boss, the college professor that helped find, what they were supposed to do, the high school coach, because you can't really have mentorship relationships over Zoom. You can't give that hard feedback over Zoom. And so we began to talk to several CEOs, Satya Nadella, Tory Burch, Steve Schwarzman, government leaders, Governors Wes Moore, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and every one of them to a person. Brian Grazer, Hollywood producer, said, without this one person, I would not be where I am today. And I think we felt compelled to write this book and tell the stories, not of the famous people that we're so proud are in the book, the people you've never heard of, the unsung heroes who invested in those individuals. And because of them, we have those incredible leaders and the impact that those leaders have had. And so I think in the boardroom today, and again, back at our conference at BDT and MSD last week, this emphasis on human capital today, yes, we can talk about AI and how that's going to make work easier for people. Yes, and how might it will transform the workplace. AI will not be a mentor, will not be that person that is giving you the tough feedback, that is investing in your career, and frankly, that is finding what we realized through the conversations that we had in this book, transformational mentoring. There's transactional, I need your recommendation letter. Can you get me that interview? But what we found is that this generation is desperate for transformational mentoring.
So we'll pick up one more point on that, and Debbie, we'll come to you because you've done a lot on this too. But and by the way, she is also very humble. This is the book. I got it at the book signing in LA at Brian's house this week. But New York Times bestseller already, so really add that to your list of incredible things.
Thank you.
Dina, everyone looks to you as a mentor in Washington, in Middle East, where I know you do a lot of work, and I do in other places across the world. But one of our jobs on our boards is, as you say, AI is great, but our primary responsibility is to find the best management team that could anticipate and navigate this incredible environment. You talk about intentional mentorship in your book. You talk about finding those people. Is there anything you learned from those discussions that is a string across all of them? Great leaders, people who can adjust, people who lead not because of their title, but because people want to follow them. What is it about that?
We learned so much, obviously, in these diverse conversations across the board. But we also did a study with the Yale School of Management. It's really the first of its kind. 2,200 young adults asked about, have you had a mentor? What was meaningful about the relationship? What are the traits that you look for? And what we realized is that the intentionality is so critical. Young people have to seek out mentors, but they also have to be mentorable. All of us on this panel have mentored many, many people. We're eager to do it, but the mentee has to be mentorable. They have to be realistic about the expectations of time. They have to make it easy on the mentor so that we can really help with what exactly it is that you need. But I also think, frankly, Generation Z, I'll speak for my own children, there are just fundamental lessons that only mentors can teach you like paying your dues. Like you probably, Mary Barra's in the book, she talks about telling people, own your job, don't rent it. Like, why don't you do the job you have now before you start asking me about a promotion? Mark and I have known each other for 25 plus years. My first job was working for an amazing Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, who found me when I was waitressing at the University of Texas to pay for college and said, come to Washington. And I said, my parents will kill me because I'm an immigrant. And they said I have to be a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer. And she, as a mentor, said to me, if you don't take a risk on yourself, Dina, no one will take a risk on you. And that led me to Washington, where I learned things that I don't think our young generation is learning. My first job was getting coffee and cigarettes for a congressman for a year. And at the end of the year, I didn't think they knew my name, and they gave me a huge promotion. These little lessons that I think have been lost somehow, maybe COVID, maybe other things that are happening. The other big takeaway from the study was the difference between men and women, what they look for in mentors. Men tend to look for a mentor with power and influence. Women want someone authentic that's really giving them that tough feedback. And we don't get enough of that. I think I can speak for at least the 4 women on the stage. All 4 of us have worked in pretty male-dominated industries. Guess what? You need male mentors. They're the ones sitting in the room. You need them to give you that tough feedback, or you will not grow. And I worry that we may have made it hard to do so nowadays.
That's a great, and I know, Deb, you wrote a lot about this, and so let's see, why don't you please add?
Yeah, I wrote a book on this. Not specifically, but I did write a book after I left Black Entertainment Television because I was CEO for 13 years. And before that, I was COO for 10 years. And it's not a position that I went after. I started as general counsel, and in graduating from Harvard Law School, general counsel was as high as you can get in the legal field in a corporation. But I was lucky enough to start doing business affairs and deals, and I oversaw our production studio. Anyway, I became familiar with the company. And I took on assignments willingly outside of the legal area. And in 10 years, I became COO and then CEO. And when I stepped down, I looked around and I said, why are there not more female CEOs? And I said, I'm going to write a book about my experience, describe how I did it, and hopefully it will motivate young women and young men to have CEO on their vision board, to want to be the top boss. So the name of my book is I Am Deborah Lee, and it was a great experience, and I've gotten wonderful feedback from it. And one thing I notice is the difference between men and women. Women take things in differently, we manage differently, and I don't mean to be so general about it because, first of all, I'm glad to see 4 women up on this panel, can I just say that? But we do handle things, I think, in general, different from men. When I first went out on maternity leave for my first child, and I was called up to New York from DC to do a BMI negotiation. And I said, well, I just had a child. I had a C-section. It's only been 8 weeks. And it was all men on the other side. And they said, we don't care. Come to New York. Or, that's the only way we're going to finish this negotiation. So I went to New York. And I used to tell this story all the time. It's the first time been away from my baby. My breast got hard on the plane. I didn't know what was happening. When I got to the meeting, I had to go immediately in the bathroom and pump my breast. Luckily, I had a pump with me. And I passed the fishbowl of men as I went into the bathroom, and I was like, if they knew what I was doing in here, it would. And when I told that story, men and women wrote me and said, we're so happy you talked about some of the differences, because there are differences. And I think even finding a mentor is different. I think what Dina said is you sometimes have to have mentors, but you also need women who have been through some of the same struggles you have. That's why I started my conference, Leading Women Define, 16 years ago, to bring prominent women together to say, okay, we're almost at the top, or we are at the top. who do we ask questions to? You know, you can't do it within your company all the time. You don't want to, you know, have your best friend be someone who works for you and then you have to restructure them out, you know, 6 months later. So I brought women together of color to talk about how you get to that ultimate goal. Who are your mentors? What kind of network do you form yourself away from your company? You know, because someone else at a drug company may have good advice for you. And it's really become something magical. This year, Kamala came and Ketanji Brown Jackson, which was incredible. And I think the women even felt more of a need of sisterhood this year. Because of what we're going through as a country. And I always encourage young people to find their network and find people who will be honest with you and will give you good advice.
That's great. The airplane story took the panel in a different direction than I thought we were going. That was great. But let's step back because I see Sarah Williamson in the office. And if she didn't, if I didn't bring this up, she would be upset. With all that's going on right now in the world, we talked about AI, how it's changing it, finding the right leaders, mentoring, very important, but also looking past the headlines towards the trend lines, thinking long term when we're being forced to make decisions with very quick changing rules, laws, market effects. How do we help our boards stay focused on the longer term thinking and give them the support they need? And let me start with Betsy, and then I'm going to go to Merritt.
We're in a unique environment now where it's opaque and volatile. So on some of my boards, like Wynn Resorts, we're asking ourselves, is it the time to spend a big capital investment to refresh our rooms? Or should we wait till we have a little bit better clarity? Our occupancy rate is holding up, our room rate is holding up, but we're a little unsure. On the other hand, if you want your enterprise to be vibrant long term, you have to think about investing in big areas. So in this particular industry in gaming, it's kind of interesting. We're 100% really penetrated. There's not much growth in North America. So gaming growth is in Thailand. It's in the Emirates, where we're doing a $4 billion project. So you have to think about, balancing your capital allocation and how soon will you do the investments. And you can't give up your long-term view that if you're going to be vibrant, you still have to have a strategy that says you're going to grow your business. And you have to be willing to look at, is your business, penetrated in one market? Do you have to shift and acquire or divest? And I think that is one of the biggest things. At Atlas Air Cargo, another board, it's about a $6 billion largest private air cargo company. Number 2 would be UPS, then FedEx, DHL. And we've had a 25% cancellation in 1 month of our international air cargo. China is a third. We move a third of all of the goods out of China. And with tariff change. So what does that mean? Are we going to buy the next, group of 747s and 737s? And, how long will this go? And what does this actually mean for the business? And, you have to rethink quickly if people want to have visibility end to end on their inventory, which is really what this is impacting. We have to now do alliances with the ocean, at Maersk and MSC, the 2 big carriers, and then be able to integrate and see what kind of other services in terms of visibility can we offer people. So I think you have to balance the big questions of long-term capital commitments against how nimble is your strategy and where can your company grow and where is it saturated? And then think more holistically ecosystems of, what are the partnering arrangements that you can come up with that might make you, more vibrant in an unpredictable moment.
Great. And Merit, especially if you could talk a little bit about with your experience in Asia Pacific and the like, what do you see, happening over there with the partnerships, relationships, and your investments and so forth?
Well, first, I think we're talking about directors and boards. So, you know, it is important to have the perspectives in the boardroom that you need for your business over the longer term, right? And you've got to be focusing intensely on your strategy. I'm fortunate to be involved with companies where the strategies that they have are very, very sound. And so, and it's a complex moment in the world, but, you know, people often ask me, because I have a background in trade in Asia, you know, has geopolitics has never entered the boardroom as it is today? Mm-hmm. And yes, that's true. The world is going through some very big shifts, and there are many areas of uncertainty, and multiple ones that we haven't experienced simultaneously. And some of those are structural because of technology. Some of those are policy because of industrial policies and security coming together. And some of those are purely geopolitical that are causing shifts, and you need to be thinking about how all of those dimensions are affecting, you know, your business and your operations in different parts of the world. But those, you know, really are the challenges of global companies. And so there are specific new dimensions, but those, I think, require, you know, real integration of strategic understanding, you know, around the world, rolling up, you know, to the overall strategy and the board. When it comes to Asia right now, you know, Asia is a period of continued economic growth and vitality. And it's also a part of the world that is trying to integrate itself further. We talk a lot about fragmentation happening in the world, and it is. I don't personally think deglobalization is the right phrase, but there is shifts in patterns of trade and investment, and they are being accelerated by the combination of technology and policy and geopolitics. And Asia is an area that's trying to integrate further. And, you know, increasingly I'm hearing, you know, not only de-risking from China, but also asking themselves, how do we integrate more with the United States and investment, but also how do we manage what could be the uncertainties associated with the tariffs? So, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and I think, you know, some of the businesses that I serve on the boards of are very exposed to these uncertainties, like in automotive, for example, and others, payments and financial services, you know, are you know, the consumer is still acting quite healthy, and if you look around the world, you know, they're drivers of growth globally. So I think the answer does depend on the sector, on the region. There's a lot of change happening. It's really important that that focus on the strategy, you know, integrate these changes, but be a strong strategy focus for the future.
So that's a great, and I'm not a speaker here, but at one point to add that I could not agree more. I mean, I think the biggest mistake companies make is over-pivoting to the headlines. And you could have done that after the financial crisis, and you could have done it after COVID. You could have done it after, you know, in the 70s with the Nixon. The bottom line is 2-3 years from now, something else will be going on. I know you're still prepared to be the toughest company you could be with your values and purpose. I want to ask, I'm going to come to you, Brian, in a second, because you're still a CEO, and you're going to be able to tell us what you're thinking. But Dina, I want to ask you, with the private and family-owned companies, it is different, and you get to see all of them. You work with the biggest ones there are. How is that different? What are you seeing there?
Well, I think the biggest difference that, frankly, we're very fortunate to have is that just long-term investment, long-term thinking. You know, these are some of the greatest companies in the world that families lead and founders. And even as they think about board members, what they're really thinking about is who will retain the culture of this family-owned business, who will retain the culture and values, as you said, over many decades. of this founder, and how do we, though, of course, introduce the right governance that we need and the right board members that will give us the experience that's needed as we go through choppy waters over the long term. So the long-term horizon of these investors, of these families and these founders is just a different way of thinking. Not saying they're not watching the headlines, but it certainly isn't. And I think even just our own firm and the way we invest with them is over, decades as well. With my hat as a board member, I am seeing, and we do see this, Fortune 500 companies, CEOs being very worried, what's happening, what's going to happen with different policies, regulation, and then, of course, as investors all around the world, whether Meta or Exxon, the national security issues that are growing daily around the world. And so I think what you said, though, Mark, is not only do I believe that you have to have long-term thinking, whether in public corporate boards or with our families and founders and investors, and retaining those values. You also have to look at that saying, don't waste a good crisis. So what are the opportunities that are emerging right now in what seems like a high volatility moment in a high volatility world? What are the opportunities? And I will just say, one, I think, is what regions of the world will emerge more stable and maybe have opportunities. Mark and I spend a lot of time in the Middle East. He's a member of the board of Aramco, of course. I'm, long time both in government and in the private sector, go regularly. I'm going when President Trump is there because His Excellency Minister Khalid Al-Falih, the investment minister of Saudi Arabia, is putting on a business summit while the president is there, which we actually did 8 years ago. And what's remarkable about what's happening in the Middle East is this moment in time and the opportunity. You have to recognize that the horror of October 7th is one of the greatest tragedies that we have witnessed, and I think it has fundamentally changed the psyche, obviously, of Israelis and some of the horrific follow-on anti-Semitism we see. So I don't want to say it as not recognizing that tragedy. On the other hand, you have the Abraham Accords that were signed really not that long ago. And those 6 countries, the signatories, including the United States, the idea that not one of them have gotten out of that treaty, even after October 7th. Think about that for a moment. These are the first set of peace treaties with Israel and Arab nations in 50 years. And I do believe over the course of the next 4 years, President Trump is going to be very focused on expanding the Abraham Accords. And quite frankly, I see a path. Even though you might say, after what's happened in the last couple of years, how do you see this? I do see a path of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Israel normalizing. And I think those of you who go there see it as well. Mm-hmm. There's been transformation in Saudi Arabia that we know about, Vision 2030, and it's on that path. But frankly, I was in the region not too long ago, and I happened to be talking to an Israeli investor and then was with a friend of mine in Saudi Arabia. And totally separately, they both said, well, I think we're at this moment now where maybe the only path is peace. Seems we've tried everything else.
The economics are so linked.
And that was the one.
The growth of the economics. You can see it, for example, I chair Google Cloud, and we see, the explosion of the data centers. And
yes.
If you look at the explosion of data centers in Kuwait, in Qatar, in the Kingdom, in the Emirates, and you see their movement to have all their data be sovereign, which is changing everything. So you're going to see that, and then you see the fact that, when you look at the work you do at Saudi Aramco and Exxon, where this huge just pull for energy that our utilities are unable to supply, we need, and we're out of our ability to create enough power on our grid. And you'll see the evolution now of things like small modular reactors, and we're going to see lots of different energy forms. It'd be curious to know how Saudi Aramco and how Exxon are looking at, SMR technology, because if you look at, yes, peace, yes, economics, but there's this pull, this big catalyst of data centers, which is driving AI and LLM and agentic. and pulling the need for power.
I couldn't agree
So,
more.
what do you see on Aramco? We haven't let you talk, Mark.
Yeah, I don't.
So
we're not
what-
going to have time
what-
for me to talk, but yeah.
But what do you see? Seriously, do you see them interested in? Everybody knew about their interest, and the normal oil and gas doing renewables. But do you see broader things, new fuel sources being talked about?
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's the best companies are thinking about 5, 10, 15, 25 years from now. Any investment an energy company makes, a healthcare company, J&J, you name it, it's not successful because what they did last quarter. It's what they did 5 years ago. So the world's future will be an alternative oil source, but not, there's going to. So, but what Aramco is looking at, reducing carbon in the amount of carbon types of fuels we have today, which is realistic. And then all different types of alternatives. The problem is they're not economically feasible without huge government assistance. And so whether it's putting the energy back into the ground, or whether it's trying to come up with alternative fuels like hydrogen, and we're investing, when you have 110 billion in profit, it's a lot of money to reinvest in alternative fuels.
Yes.
You can do that. But it's really without a market. It's investing ahead of the market.
Like sustainable aviation fuel.
Yes, exactly.
3 times the price of jet fuel. We'd like to use it at Atlas Air, but
It's
our
a
customers don't want to pay triple.
And what Aramco doesn't have to worry about, they don't have an activist investor coming in and saying, where's your return right away? So that helps. Let me go down to Brian. You could talk about the Abraham Accords, you could talk about energy, or you could talk about your CEO role. And honestly, how are you dealing with these longer term issues in a short term environment?
Yeah, I mean, it's all the issues of uncertainty, how you choose to invest it permeates across all of our clients, as you mentioned. For us, I would say we get the benefit of being a private company and can just set our strategy and invest long term. I'll say that with a little bit of an asterisk next to it, and it ties to your notion around never waste a crisis. And so what we have done and try to do is, you can't change your strategy every time that there's a flash in the pan or something new. And so you try to isolate your team and everyone else around all the exogenous stuff out there and just keep driving. And so where I said is we've, no change in just a huge growth focus and investment in product and investment in our clients. But the asterisk I'd say next to it and the never waste a crisis is, but we're going to find ways to make ourselves more efficient using AI to allow us to invest more, but kind of hedge a little bit of our risks that are out there. And so we've pushed to make sure that we can drive the same amount of growth, but with no incremental investment in headcount. And so how much can we drive as a constraint and say, I don't know if you, the CEO of Shopify, Toby Lukes, sent around a memo that got everywhere on Twitter, or everyone at X, and everywhere on LinkedIn, which was, AI is not an option, like it is a requirement. And his push, anytime anyone asks for more headcount, is prove to me that you can't do it with AI. And so we've taken a version of that and challenged our own team that said, whatever you had or you're going to put in your plan for 2026, and you're kind of said you're not going to get it. You're still going to require to hit the same growth targets. Show me how you can't do that internally through using our AI. We'll mix shift resources accordingly, like keep the same focus on growth, but I think we can find it and use this as a way and use AI as an opportunity, not just to drive that growth, but make ourselves more efficient in the process. Your new company, Meta, that you'll join the board of, I think Mark Zuckerberg's done a great job of driving that efficiency in a ruthless way. I think that there is learnings from that I think every CEO is taking that says, is this a unique moment in time where from an investment and growth perspective, I can have my cake and eat it too, or I can go and drive that growth, but find a way to actually make our team be and act more efficiently. And I think that there are reverberations of that tie back to everything that people have said around mentorship and other things as well. If you're going to make yourself more efficient, you do it in a way that where you can support and bring up people at different levels of the pyramid. You were at EY. I spent a bunch of time at McKinsey and Company. And how do you keep the pyramid and people doing those levels of work so you continue to develop people? And we're going through our own. Every CEO has to go through their own little thought experiment of how you actually do that internally on your own. And what we've just told our team is, the people who, every one of our team members who finds unique ways to use AI to drive their productivity, they're always going to have a role. They're always going to have growth. And now we've started to add every single new rack for roles, which will be kind of remixing. Every person we hire has had an example of how they use AI in their previous job. And it's a basic thing where you're going to learn things from the new people you add in a different way. And so, sorry, Mark.
No, I was going to say, I think you're spot on. I forget, well, I didn't say it. Someone much smarter than me said it, but you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by somebody who knows how to use AI.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's going to be true.
Yeah.
We do have two questions from
Mark,
the audience.
can I just add to that before you move on?
Sure.
I mean, I think the long-term issue and the short-term issue, but mainly the long-term issue, is to have courageous leaders, to have people that set goals and focus on long-term, but are nimble enough to change when things go wrong or differently than you anticipate. I remember when I first heard the word COVID, I was at a Burberry board meeting, and they were talking about this little disease in China, and it may affect the China numbers, but nothing to worry about. Next thing you know, it's a global pandemic. And what you said about the economic downturn of 2008, COVID, there are always things like that. Who would have ever foreseen something called COVID? And, with Marriott, they had to close hotels. Retail had to close stores. They had to lay off people. And so it takes courage, keeping up with AI and all the new technology, but also having the right team and being able to pivot when you have to, because there's always, whether it's terrorism, whether it's a global war, there are always things that require a change in your long-term strategy.
So that's a great. I'm going to take. We only have 7 minutes left, so I'm going to ask whoever wants to answer this. Two good questions. It really goes to your point about pivoting and thinking differently. They're asking the themes of these three questions is, what do you look for in board members today? Some are asking, well, do you hire a technology person, right? Because, we need to know more about technology. You hire an HR person because we need to know about workforce. Or how do you find people that are versed enough, maybe younger people? How do you look at aging out on boards? Some of the questions here are around, how do you look and think about the best board members today? Merritt, when you start?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say it hasn't been said that, you want to make sure as a board member, that your company is attracting the most exciting talent wherever it resides and feel that it's a great place to work. So that's part of, I think, our responsibility is to be working with the CEO and the management around those issues and paying close attention. In terms of the skill set of the directors, I have come to really strongly believe that the board is a mix, and what you need is the right mix. And so if you're on the board of a leading global company, you'd better have very global perspectives on that board that understand major markets that you're in, that have domain expertise in the business that you're in and related adjacencies that bring those diverse perspectives and have very substantial, I think, judgment and experience around strategy and governance. So I think it's not my first impulse to say we need a cyber person, we need a technology person. We do need those things, but they have to be married with that governance perspective and strategy, not just those areas of technical competence. I do think technology is increasingly important, and for technology companies that don't have technology expertise on their board, there's something missing. But there's also a lot of different expertise that you can bring into the boardroom. And I think that's part of the governance opportunity also.
So cognitive diversity, very important is what you're saying. Let me ask, but hold off. If you only got 4 minutes left, I want each, I'm going to go down 1 minute is what you got, because we got 4 minutes. 1, 2, 3, we got 5 minutes. I'm saying we're taking an extra minute. Start with you, Brian. Something positive, uplifting about the next year or so from a board perspective. What's going to be going right? 1 minute. We each got 1 minute.
I'll do less than that. I hope whatever period of time that we're going through is short-term in nature. And so my optimistic or hopeful point is it won't change our strategy, like I mentioned, but that we can get through whatever this phase of uncertainty is. And then on the flip side of it, go back to some notion of American exceptionalism.
Dina.
I think we're going to be going through in the next couple of years a transformational human capital moment. And by that I mean the use of AI. People are going to be able to do their jobs more effectively and all of that. But I also think just what it means to be a leader. And in our book, Who Believed in You, we ask people to ask their employees and their leaders a very important question. Where are all the people that worked for you? How have you invested in their careers so that they have been promoted or they found their purpose in your company, or they went on and went other places, and frankly, because of you, continue to grow? I definitely think that as we look at the challenges that we face, and I know we've all kind of touched on them at this moment, this transformational human capital moment is incumbent upon leaders and all of us to invest in that next generation. So we hope when you read our book, you'll ask yourself, who believed in you? Have you thanked them? Very quickly, Christine Lagarde got emotional when we were talking to her. She said, I never thanked the woman, the female partner in France who believed in me. I wouldn't be where I am today without her. And who are you going to invest in to create leaders that are going to change the world?
Great. Okay. Deb.
Well, I hope that what's beginning to happen with companies, some companies, is they're reaching down and really asking themselves, what are our values? As a company, whether it's a family-oriented company like a Marriott or a P&G, what do we believe in? And how are we going to incorporate that into what we do from day to day?
Right.
And I think, for all the uncertainty there is now and the things that are being thrown at companies, companies are going to have to dig deep, and they're going to have, and I think the younger generation, at least I hear this about them, are going to ask for evidence of that. What do you believe in? It's not how many widgets did you sell last week, or where do you think you'll be in 5 years, but what do you believe in, and how are you trying to make this world a better place on a global basis, within our country, and I think those values are going to be tested in the next year, and I hope something good comes out of it.
Great. Merritt, you got to keep us on. We got 1 minute each.
Okay, well, look, I think there's a lot to be optimistic about when we're talking about technology and what that can do and how companies can bring it to bear to improve human life and work with everybody and work with governments. So it's a very positive story. In the policy arena, I too am optimistic. There's a path forward. These areas of tremendous uncertainty could land, and could land well, but there's a lot of risk in the system. So I'd like to be optimistic that we will move forward constructively and get back to the kind of growth trajectory I was expecting.
All right, bring us home, Betsy.
I think the things that boards are going to focus on and that we'll see great positive movement on is the customer experience, the customer journey. We're all used to technology as consumers. Our businesses are going to do a consumer-like experience using technology more and more in the future. Better analytics, better customer journey. I think we're going to listen to the new voices of our customers, which is new cohorts. So it's Gen Z we're going to focus more on, which is larger cohort, millennial, and we're going to bring more of those people into the boardroom to have that perspective. Merritt's point on global, everybody's markets are more and more international. In the US, we have less than 10% international board member makeup. So I think we're going to expand into global areas. And in a time of more and more rapid change, because although you stick to your strategy, the amount of change, the rate of change is going up, I think we're going to cohere and learn to process as a team. You have 8, 10, 12 people in a boardroom, and they have to knit the ability to make clever, stress-testing business judgments together to process.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you all. I'm optimistic because we have all of you giving your talents and your energy and your insights and wisdom to the best and biggest boards in the world and the small startup companies, and thank you for that. Thank you, Milken, for the panel, and please welcome and thank our guests.